History of Slovenian Culture in Canada by Dr. Tone Kacicnik. Thank you very much to the organizing committee of Slovenski Dom on Pape Avenue in Toronto, and especially to Oskar Koren, its vice president, who personally invited me to speak about the history of Slovenian culture in Canada. As a proud Slovenian living in Toronto, Ontario, Canada for 54 years, it is my honor to give to you a brief history of our culture in Canada, which began almost 100 years ago. I would also like to talk about how Slovenian immigrants integrated into the multicultural life of Toronto and across Canada. Slovenians are the smallest nation among the Slavic-speaking countries in Europe, of which there are many who comprise a large territory. Our greatest poet, Romanticist Dr. France Prešeren, highlighted this fact in one of his poems when he wrote, "Največ sveta otrokom sliši slave." Most of Europe's land belongs to the Slavic-speaking nations. As a proud Slovenian, I say we may be small in number, but we are a very resilient, talented and hard-working nation. Slovenia is a popular tourist destination in Europe and has won numerous awards for sustainable tourism. Some of its land features and traditional foods have garnered international distinctions. Thanks to their achievements at the international competitions, Slovenian athletes have been placing Slovenia on the global map, winning medals in Olympic and World Cup winter sports, the prestigious Tour de France, cycling events, and excelling in professional basketball and hockey. Let's look at the history of Slovenians in Canada. In the mid-1800s, a Slovenian missionary, Father Baraga, arrived in Northern America to minister to the growing flock of inhabitants along the southern shores of Lake Superior. In 1853, Baraga was named the first bishop of Sault Ste. Marie. He was an accomplished multilingualist, fluently speaking several languages, in addition to mastering the Ottawa and Ojibwe branches of the Algonquin languages. An accomplished grammarian, Baraga wrote a grammar of the Ojibwe language and what it still is considered the largest Ojibwe dictionary. He wrote volumes about his work among the people. Widely respected and known as the snowshoe priest, Father Baraga was much loved by the indigenous communities he served in the Lake Superior region. Father Tone Zrnc of Toronto's first Slovenian parish and an immigrant himself wrote and published a biography of this missionary, Po Baragovi deželi, in 1969. Slovenian culture in Canada can be divided into three waves. The first large immigration of Slovenians to arrive in Canada was over 100 years ago in the 1920s after World War I. At that time, Canadian provinces, especially Manitoba and British Columbia, were seeking young men to work on farms and railways. These Slovenians brought their culture with them and started to organize various social events. In Manitoba, a weekly Sunday afternoon bilingual radio program was created and hosted by Steve Cesar. Before World War II, an estimated 4,600 Slovenians lived in Canada. At the time, the most vibrant Slovenian community was in Kirkeldame, Ontario, where in 1933, the first independent Slovenian benefit society, Bled Mutual Benefit Society, was established. It was named after Lake Bled, one of the Slovenia's most prestigious alpine lakes. The geographical distribution of Slovenian people changed dramatically during the after World War II. This was partly due to the resettlement of Slovenians from the mining towns of North Ontario to the Southern Ontario. Many settled on farms in the Beamsville and St. Catharines regions. Another reason for the change of immigration from Europe between 1947 to 1951. Slovenian immigrants arrived with a year-long contract of obligatory work. When the contract ended, many settled in urban areas such as Toronto and Hamilton. This was the second wave. Many in this second wave landed at Pier 2 in Halifax, which operated from 1928 to 1971. From 1951-1960, the group of Slovenian immigrants who arrived in Canada included family members of pre- and post-war immigrants, as well as young men and women who had escaped Slovenia and then arrived in refugee camps until their immigration was arranged. The Slovenian immigrants began establishing cultural and social activities based on old traditions and some new ideas. This was the start of the golden age of Slovenian culture in the Toronto area. The third wave of Slovenian immigrants to Canada arrived over the course of the next 20 years from the 1960s through to 1980. They came for economic reasons. Many settled in Ontario. I was among this third wave. Slovenian culture in Canada continued to blossom during this period. With the growth of Slovenian communities, social and economic structures began to develop. In 1945, the Bled Mutual Benefit Society had 13 branches across Canada. In the 1950s, 2 Slovenian credit unions were established in Toronto. Skilled craftsmen founded their own businesses, many in residential construction. Slovenian professionals established private practices catering to the various needs of their communities. After I had obtained my license to practice dental art in Ontario, I opened my dental office in downtown Toronto. In Toronto, a growing major center, various social, cultural, and political associations began to emerge with the arrival of immigrants. Canadian Slovenians are predominantly Roman Catholic. The Vincentian Fathers from Slovenia had arrived in 1949, and by 1954, the first Slovenian church was built in Toronto. A second parish was established in Etobicoke in 1961, followed by church communities in Hamilton 1965, Montreal 1964, and Winnipeg 1963. The Slovenian immigrants were very social and loved their traditions. Cultural associations were founded in all major Slovenian settlements. Slovenians' national homes and summer camps were built. In smaller towns, a single club might fill the needs of the social and cultural needs of the local Slovenian community. Slovenian clubs were established across Canada in few major urban settings, including Vancouver, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Windsor, Kitchener, St. Catharines, Toronto, and Montreal. In 1959, Slovenski Dom was established on Pape Avenue in Toronto. For many, the parish was the center of religious, cultural, educational, and social activities. Children enrolled in Slovenian school classes held on weekends and participated in calendars, plays, choir groups and musical presentations. Choirs, drama groups, religious organizations, and folk dance groups held their meetings or practices during the week. Music festivals featured solo and group performances of all ages. The accordion often taking a prominent role in a band's show. Events, artistic performances by visiting groups, and fundraising banquets filled the social calendars. It was a golden age of Slovenian culture in the Toronto area. I arrived in Canada with a university diploma from the Academy for Theatre, Radio, Film and Television, AGRFT in Slovenia. I had the honor of staging a solo performance during which I cited over 20 poems written by Dr. France Prešeren. 2 performances were held in the Church Hall in Etobicoke, one in downtown Toronto, and others in St. Catharines, Beamsville, and Hamilton. With the arrival of new immigrants from Slovenia, cultural activities increased greatly. Research by Slovenski Dom has shown that there have been more than 170 books written by Slovenian immigrants in Canada. This collection represents a Slovenian literary culture heritage in Canada. The Slovenian community has welcomed a few talented poets. A 2009 poetry contest held by Slovenski Dom was won by Bernarda Čemas. Similarly, the poem Long Live Slovenski Dom by Cy Prezel Jr. was awarded the first prize in another poetry contest. The community is enriched by its literary writers, skilled professional experts or varied specialties. Slovenian culture in Canada has been documented in a film produced by Slovenian producer, director Janko Virant. His documentary Slovenian Canadian Roots, which he directed and produced, has been shown numerous times on Canadian television and Slovenian and Canadian halls. There are a few budding film producers in the community. Another expression of Slovenian culture activity in Canada is through food, central to many cultures. The Kranjska klobasa is a popular traditional food, a Slovenian culinary specialty and often among the menu offerings in private and at public events. Our multicultural banquets are legendary for the excellence of the variety of dishes. Desserts are plentiful and deliciously sweet. Potica is a world-renowned nut bread often served at special occasions. A few years ago, Slovenski Dom organized a series of potica challenges at the Slovenian seniors' home, Dom Lipa. Up to 10 potica baking teams would enter the challenge, each team submitting 2 identical walnut bread rolls. Potica was judged by a team of 4 judges in front of a live audience and also had a chance to sample and determine their favorites. After the winners were announced, the social activity continued. Several Slovenian Canadian cookbooks have been published in Canada. The best known are Dom Lipa's favorite recipes, a collection of Canadian Slovenian recipes through past and present. The Slovenian Hunters and Anglers Club's Culinary Treasures, and the recent Moja Financial Cookbook, a collection of the community's most popular culinary recipes. Also of note is the online article Canadian-Slovenian Timeline, 1497 to 2014 by Stane Krajnc for the Canadian Slovenian Historical Society. Maintaining their culture is important to Slovenians. They take pride in their choral singing, folklore dancing, traditional music, writing, fine art, and theater. Music is an integral part of the Slovenian culture, and in Canada we can boast of many talented musicians. Among the Slovenian bands that have entertained our communities over the past 60 plus years, to name a few of the many: Veseli Vandrovčki, Veseli Pomurci, Met Labor Ensemble, Spotlight Orchestra, Walter Ostanek Band, Mladi Kanadžani, Niagara Button Boxers, Golden Keys, and Ensemble Gregorič. Not only do Slovenians enjoy dancing, but we also enjoy performances by Slovenian folk dance groups. Dancers can range in age from 4 years through to teens and young adults. One club was unique in that its dance group was comprised of older adults performing very traditional folkloric dances. Dressed in traditional dress from various Slovenian regions and accompanied by traditional music, sometimes live music, but often by audio recordings. The dancers are delight to watch. Among the first dance group was Nagel, founded by Cyril Sošek in 1959, and it still operates today. Folk dance groups established later and still entertaining us today, such as Mladi Glas, Planika, Toronto, Plesati Ottawa, and Rožmarin Manitoba, have operated over the course of multiple generations of immigrants. Slovenians love to sing, and they sing well. Choirs have contributed to Slovenian culture in Canada. Along with the church choirs, well known in the Toronto community, have been Fantje na vasi, Plamen, under leadership of Maria Ahačić-Polak, and Naša Pesem. Outside of Toronto, some known choirs have been Zarja in Timmins, Zvon in Windsor, and Vigret in Sudbury. Slovenian communities across Canada have formed theatrical and cultural societies since their arrival in the turn of the 20th century. Maintaining their culture is important to Slovenians. The first Slovenian-Canadian Cultural Society, LIRA, founded in 1927 in Windsor, had an active drama section and a choir for a few years. In the 1930s, the center of cultural activity was Kirkland Lake, Ontario, where the Slovensko pevsko in dramatsko društvo Triglav, Slovenian Choral and Theatre Society Triglav, was active until 1960. Members produced concerts and plays in their town, as well in Timmins and Noranda. Toronto has been a central culture hub since 1951. The Slovenian Cultural Association, established by Stane Brunšek, provided social, educational, and theatrical activities. From the 1960s through to the 1980s, Milko Čekuta led Slovensko gledališče Slovenian Theatre and produced numerous works of world-renowned classics and Slovenian dramatic literature. The plays were staged not only in the GTA, but also traveled to other Slovenian communities in Ontario and the United States. Also during the time, the dynamic Father Tone Zrnc, parish priest and principal founder of Toronto Slovenska šola, led a vibrant and creative school of Slovenian language families. His children and youth choirs were exceptional, and the student musicals were masterful productions. The directors of the Slovenska igralska skupina SIST, Slovenian Theatre Group, based out of Etobicoke Parish, in the 1990s carried on the cultural work which began in the 1950s. I directed and acted in 3 very popular comedies: Glavni dobitek, the first prize, Martin Krpan, a comedy about an exceptionally strong Slovenian in the former Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Deseti brat, 10 brothers. We had multiple performances across the greater GTA area. Slovenians like to keep fit and active. We love sports including soccer, volleyball, lawn bowling, skiing and hunting. There are a few clubs who have purchased rural properties for the enjoyment of outdoor activities for all age groups. At the Slovenian summer camp in Bolton, a 40-acre rural property outside Toronto, purchased in the 1950s, an annual Slovenian Day celebration is held on the Canada Day weekend. For many of the second wave of immigrants and their families, it has been a piece of Slovenia, a weekend retreat very close to their hearts. It was among the first rural properties purchased by Slovenians for Slovenians. Currently, 3rd and 4th generation and their families maintain a summer place of visit regularly to enjoy the pool and social activities. Members of the camp organize a variety of sports tournaments throughout the summer season for children, youth and adults, along with other social events for anyone in the community. Vinska Trgatev, like Oktoberfest, is a popular event that closes the season on Thanksgiving weekend. The community supports varieties of charitable projects in Canada and abroad, such as Victoria's Trust, Catholic Charities, Slovenian missionaries, and Slovenian old age homes in Toronto and Hamilton. According to the 2016 census, 10,295 people reported Slovenian language as their mother tongue. According to community estimates, 25,000 first and second generation Slovenians are actively involved in ethnic organizations. Although some Slovenian Canadians do not associate with Slovenian churches and organizations, they may understand the language and keep close ties with relatives in Slovenia. Some live in places that lack Slovenian clubs. Adjusting for these factors would bring the total to between 35 and 40,000. The first and third groups arrive primarily on economic motivations. Those in the second immigration group were primarily political immigrants. Slovenians entering Canada in the 1960s and 1970s had a much easier time than those arriving earlier. Many knew someone here who could help them. Also, since the Yugoslav government no longer restricted immigration, many land had left legally and could return home at will. This group was better educated and could get jobs as skilled craftsmen, which Canada badly needed. With the growth of communities, especially in Toronto, an economic infrastructure began to develop. In the 1950s, J.E. Craig's Credit Union and the Slovenian Parish Credit Union were established in Toronto. Professionals cater to their countrymen and craftsmen open up businesses, many of these businesses concentrated in southern Ontario. There are a sizable number of construction and manufacturing firms, along with independent skilled tradespeople and professional associates in the service industries. Many enterprises are family operated. A few Slovenian businesses have made their marks in the large Canadian economy, including the famed Marineland amusement park in Niagara Falls, owned by the late John Holler. The political situation in Slovenia in the early 1990s led to several new organizations being formed in Toronto. The Kanadski Slovenski Congress, Canadian Slovenian Congress, was founded in 1989 with branches in Quebec, Montreal, Ontario, Ottawa, Toronto, Hamilton, Windsor, Thunder Bay, Manitoba, Winnipeg, and British Columbia, Vancouver. A member of the World Slovenian Congress, its objective was to promote the interests and aspirations of Slovenians in Canada, to defend the rights of Slovenians in their homeland and abroad, and to promote friendship between Canada and Slovenia. Since 1996, VSKO's Glasilo magazine has provided news, literature, and commentary for and about Canadians of Slovenian heritage. It is currently available by subscription. Slovenian radio programs have provided information on club activities, promoted Slovenian music, and helped preserve the language. In 1965, Frances Starchov produced a daily program, Caravan of Friendship, on Toronto's Chin FM, aimed at immigrants from Yugoslavia. After the breakup of Yugoslavia in 1991, Frances had a weekly Chin radio program until her retirement in December 1997. VSKO took over the radio program, and between 1977 and 1986, a weekly evening radio hour sponsored and produced by Radio Club Slovenia focused on news from Slovenia and communities in Canada, community announcements, and ethnic heritage. Since 1991, VSKO, Radio Glas Kanadskih Slovencev, Toronto, Voice of Canadian Slovenians, has continued to produce a weekly radio hour for 5 years. I was the producer of programming. In Montreal, Toronto, Hamilton, and Winnipeg, parishes have run Slovenian language schools since the parishes were founded in other places. Slovenian clubs staffed and housed language schools when numbers justified. Slovenian schools provided the basics in Slovenian languages, history, geography, and literature. The peak period for these schools was in the 1960s and 1970s. Between 1961 and 1986, 900 children were enrolled in the Slovenian school at Our Lady of Miraculous Medal in Toronto. Blaž Potočnik and Mimi Radovan conducted Slovenian language courses for adults in Toronto until 1995. After Mr. Potočnik passed away, there were no courses for adults until 2010, when Slovenski Dom took the initiative and organized Slovenian language courses for adults. During the pandemic in 2020, the adult courses were suspended and replaced with an online Slovenian language tutoring program which carries on today. In this program, each student is assigned a private tutor in Slovenia and they meet weekly online. This program is well attended and is functioning well. Although immigration has significantly declined and the registrations have decreased, Slovenian language classes continue to operate for both children and adults. Thus concludes my brief presentation of the history of Slovenian culture in Canada. Slovenians in Canada are a proud and resilient people. We love our language, our culture, our heritage, our businesses, and our identity. We have been highly regarded allies in the multicultural mosaic of Canada.